Hello, I'm Joshua Gillespie, and just in case you didn't read the title of this video, welcome back to Sonic Month, everyone. Now, today we're talking about two games. Sort of. We're talking about Sonic 3, which I don't have. So, we'll be using Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for the 360. And we're talking about Sonic and Knuckles for the Genesis. So, first, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Wait, that doesn't make sense.
Actually, it does make sense, for you see, the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge can be combined with Sonic 2 to allow the player to play as Knuckles. Now, using Knuckles' abilities, you can reach places that were unreachable by Sonic, but because of Knuckles' very short jump, it makes some of the boss battles a little more difficult. Also, when Sonic 1 is added, you're brought to a screen that simply says, "No way." But by entering some codes, you can access the special stages from Sonic 3. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on to the topic of Sonic 3. Sonic 3 was released in 1994, 2 years after Sonic 2, dubbed Hedgehog Day. All the characters acquired new abilities. Sonic has a shield that gives him protection, and Tails can fly, enabling him to reach higher locations. It received high ratings, and it sold 1.02 million copies for the Genesis, which is less than Sonic 2, and significantly less than Sonic 1. Let's talk about the story. After Sonic defeats Dr. Robotnik at the end of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, his space station, the Death Egg, crash lands on the mystical floating landmass called Angel Island. As Dr. Robotnik begins to repair the damaged ship, he meets up with Knuckles the the last surviving member of an ancient civilization of Echidnas that once inhabited the island. He is also the guardian of the Master Emerald, which grants the island its levitation powers. Knowing Sonic and Tails will try to track him down, and realizing that he can use the Master Emerald to power the ship, Dr. Robotnik tricks Knuckles into believing Sonic is trying to steal this emerald. Shortly after, Sonic and Tails in their biplane, the Tornado, are in search of Dr. Robotnik. Sonic, now possessing the emeralds from Sonic 2, turns into Super Sonic, but as soon as they arrive, Knuckles ambushes them from underground and knocks the Chaos Emeralds from them, returning him to normal. Knuckles steals these emeralds and disappears. Now let's talk about the levels. This game probably has the least amount of them. There are 6 levels with 2 acts each, with a mid-level boss and another one at the end. The levels are Angel Island Zone, Hydro City Zone, Marble Garden Zone, Carnival Night Zone, Ice Cap Zone, and finally Launch Base Zone. There are 6 mid-bosses and 8 main bosses. The final level has 3. Now we're going to talk about the special stage Blue Sphere, which is present in both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. The objective of this is to turn all the blue spheres red without touching any of the red spheres. If you do this, you get a Chaos Emerald. The level has a 3D look to it, similar to the special stage in Sonic 2. There are 7 unique stages, each representing the separate Chaos Emerald. One thing I wanted to mention about the levels though, is that even though there are fewer than the other games, they are much longer and have a better flow to them than the previous games. There is a multiplayer mode to this game, but it's basically the same thing from Sonic 2. The only difference being, well, instead of using old levels from the game, in Sonic 3 they use new areas. But it's just the same running race, getting power-ups. It's fun, but not really something you'll go back to a lot. Now let's talk about the music, because this is pretty interesting. Rumor has it that the late King of Pop, Michael Jackson, actually wrote the music for this game. But some say that he wrote the music and it was never used, and some say he did write the music, but it was so bad sounding through the Genesis sound chip that he refused to have his name in the credits. It would make sense for the King of Pop to have done the music, seeing as how Moonwalker was an exclusive game for the Genesis. Another rumor says that Sega dropped the music or just dropped his name from the credits because this was at a time where Mr. Jackson was getting a lot of, well, if you know the history of Michael Jackson, you probably know what was going on at the time. So, until we do get a definitive answer, this is just going to be one piece of trivia that we'll look at when we think of Sonic 3. Now let's talk about the add-on to Sonic 3, Sonic & Knuckles. Like I said, this was the first Sonic game I ever played, and I played it on the Sonic & Knuckles collection for the PC. Now, these games were originally supposed to be one, but due to the limitations of the Genesis, it had to be split into two. So, Sonic & Knuckles is a continuation of the story to Sonic 3. Speaking of which, let's talk about it. At the end of Sonic 3, after Dr. Robotnik's defeated at his launch base, the rebuilt Death Egg fell back onto Angel Island and crashed on top of Lava Reef's volcano. Now the evil Doctor attempts once again to repair the Death Egg, this time by trying to use the Master Emerald to fuel its engines. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about Sonic 3 was the graphical change made to Sonic. He looks older and has more of that sarcastic attitude to him that we all know him for now. Also, these games have new power-ups. Along with the standard invincibility and speed shoes, this time we have the fire, water, and lightning shields, with each one granting Sonic new abilities. So, unlike Sonic 3, there are no save files, and you can't play as Tails. You can only play as Sonic, who still retains his abilities from Sonic 3, and Knuckles, who can glide and climb. Like Sonic 3, this game doesn't have very many levels. The first 4 have 2 acts, with a mini-boss and a boss at the end. These levels are Mushroom Hill Zone, Flying Battery Zone, Sandopolis Zone, and Lava Reef Zone. After you go to that, you go to the 1-act Hidden Palace Zone.
If you're wondering, yep, this is that Hidden Palace Zone, the one from Sonic 2. It still has the Master Emerald, and this time it helps drive the story, making it the only plot-based level from any of the Genesis Sonic games.
After that, the levels only have 1 act. These levels are Sky Sanctuary Zone, Death Egg Zone, and if all Chaos Emeralds have been collected, you go to the final level, the Doomsday Zone. This game has many different endings depending on how many Chaos Emeralds you collect, and they can range from the good ending to basically Eggman still winning. Now, Knuckles' side of the story takes place after Sonic's, and honestly, it'll take me a long time to explain his story, so to avoid making this video 20 minutes long, I'll just say that Knuckles thinks Eggman is his ally, but then he's betrayed. How surprising. Now that we've talked about Sonic 3, and we've talked about Sonic and Knuckles, let's talk about them together, like they were originally intended. First of all, let's talk about the difficulty of these games. Sonic 1 was tough. Sonic 2 was extremely difficult, yet forgiving. But Sonic 3 and Knuckles is
a nightmare.
Don't expect any help from this game, especially not from the level select code, because it's just as cryptic as it gets. Don't expect any extra lives or continues either. You won't find them. Either I was a master at this game on the PC, or I didn't mind dying as much. Come to think of it, I didn't. The levels have many ways of beating them. It doesn't lead to anything different, but like there's different ways to complete each level, which makes them fun to go over and play again. As difficult as this game is, believe me, it's very difficult. It's also very fun. The difficulty doesn't make it bad. Also, there are save points in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So, really, the difficulty, as legendary as it is, doesn't really change the overall fact that this is a great game.
when you combine the levels of Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, you get 20 levels with 24 acts. That's more than Sonic 2 and Sonic 1, making this the biggest Sonic game on the standard Genesis. So who is Sonic 3 for, and who is Sonic & Knuckles for? See, if I do that, it would make it more difficult because these games separated both have their issues, such as Sonic 3 not including Knuckles, and Sonic and Knuckles not including the save feature, and them both being rather short. So instead, I'm going to review them as a whole. So who is Sonic 3 and Knuckles for? Well, this is a near-perfect game for the Genesis. I know I've said that before. It's like the other 2D Sonic side-scrollers. Maybe its story is a bit confusing and the endings may piss some players off, but this was really gutsy for Sega to do. To split a game and make it an add-on, it was very innovative at the time and it paved the way for the creation of DLC. And to give the game 2 separate stories was also very new, even though most players would be unaware of it until the end. Knuckles was a great addition, and giving him unique abilities, similar to Tails in Sonic 2, really made him fun to play with and go back and try out all the characters. Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles are both very difficult games, just like I said. But because of the save feature in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it makes it not as frustrating. Overall, this is a great game, and one I think any lover of platformers will enjoy. I give it an 8 out of 10. So what do I think of Sonic 3 and Knuckles? Like I've said, these were the first 2 Sonic games I ever played, and I remember playing them a lot back on Windows 95. So returning to them, I was totally pumped. And finding that they are still fun, fast, and enjoyable really meant a lot to me because these games hold a lot of nostalgia to me. The difficulty I had completely forgotten about, and it did irritate me occasionally, but it was never to the point where I wanted to give up. These games are just amazing. I don't know what else to say. They aren't perfect, but they're very near perfect. I recommend this game not only to people who love platformers, people who love Sonic. I just recommend this to anyone. This is an amazing game, and a game that everyone should at least play once.
Now, the next game in Sonic Month actually came out before Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and it was innovative by using the new gaming technology of the CD, bringing us the fastest, the biggest, and most confusing game that Sonic's ever been in. So stay tuned. I'm Joshua Gillespie, and thank you for watching.